r/ask Reddit. When you're lying in bed, do you ever randomly remember some relatively minor social missteps or poorly chosen words you did said years earlier, and then beat yourself up over it even though it really wasn't a big deal? If so, what happened? I ripped Chuck E. Cheese's nose off at a birthday party almost 20 years ago and I still remember it in this manner every once in a while. Weird shit affects you when you're young. I think Chuck E. Cheese is more mortified than you are. My high school crush swung by my dad's house a few months after I had graduated high school. Me and my buddy were deep in the backyard working on an airsoft course. She tried calling my phone and it was in my room. Turns out she was only in town for the day to surprise family and thought it would be nice to surprise me. She went to Colorado after that and met her husband. I feel you, man. After graduation, we were gonna have one last hangout but hadn't planned anything. Then at night, my friend hits me up. This girl I liked hit me up, but I didn't go for some reason and I regret it every ducking day. I don't believe in predestination, but I also believe everything happens for a reason. I know Contradiction City. At the end of freshman year in HS, a girl confessed she was into me. Literally the last day of school she handed me a note as I got on my bus. I basically ignored her the next 3 years because I had the hots for someone else. Well, about a year or two after graduation we met up and started hanging out, and we have been together for over 8 years now. I've joked that it would been cool had we dated in high school because we would be working on 12 years now, but we realized it's likely we wouldn't have lasted because teenage relationships are a mess, and it's quite possible we wouldn't have made it. Not to be cliche, but you know what they say, when one door closes another one opens, and not all doors have locks. Sometimes I randomly remember when I was in 4th grade and I would race through my math work to try and work in a group with people who I thought liked me but were actually just being nice. Now that I remember it, I was just really ducking annoying. More often than not I just say God, kid me was the stupidest person on the planet, and I'm pretty sure decade later I'm going to say the same about current me. I just remembered this and told my husband about it so it's fresh in my mind. When I was a junior in high school I worked as a bagger at a grocery store. One day, 2 women came through my line. I noticed that there was a covered car seat in the cart as well as a baby in one of the women's arms. As I was placing their groceries in the cart, I placed a bag with a dozen eggs in the car seat as it was the only room left. One of the women instantly yelled about her baby. Confused, I looked at the baby in her arms. Apparently there were 2 babies and I put the eggs on her newborn. It's been nearly 20 years and I am still mortified. I am loving this thread because I often kick myself over a lot of social interactions. But one piece of advice I tell myself that I think will help you here is damn that was so stupid but it makes for a great story. Damn that was so stupid but at least I didn't put eggs on a newborn baby. At a job interview probably 5 years ago, I was in the sitting area waiting on the interviewer. I had my purse on my lap. She surprised me by coming out really fast, hand extended, and I stood up quickly to shake her hand. Forgetting my purse was in my lap, I dropped it and spilled the majority of the contents on the floor. I tried to lunge forward to grab it before it fell, lost my balance and started to fall face first towards the ground. I corrected myself, but ended up falling back down on my butt into my seat. The woman looked at me like she couldn't even process what the duck just happened and slowly lowered her hand. There was no handshake. I did not get the job. This whole event transpired in probably less than 3 seconds, but it is permanently seared in my memory. One time I had a kid come in for an interview as an apprentice for my business. It was a small business, maybe 4 employees. He came in for an interview. On the way in the door, his jeans belt loop got stuck on the door and he continued walking without realizing it. It broke one of the door hinges and tore his pants in half. He got the job. I couldn't stop laughing at him. Poor kid. I catch my belt loop on my living room door catch at least once a week, and I feel like an angry, lumpy idiot every time. 7 years ago I sneezed on a girl sitting next to me on the train and she called me out on it. She was really pretty. I still remember her eyes every time I'm about to sneeze. I had a pregnant lady on the train cram up next to me and her husband beside her. She threw up in a plastic bag that leaned on my leg. As I turned to ask her to move the warm patch on my leg, I guess, Husband started full making out with each other. She knew what happened, then she established dominance to the situation, letting me know she's in control of this awkward train ride. A disgusting power move, unfortunately still counts as a power move. My moment was in the 2nd grade talent show. My friend was doing a magic routine and he asked for a volunteer, so I put up my hand. He picked me and asked me if I saw any Rice Krispies in the cereal box. There were like 1 or 2 stuck to the sides. So I said, "Yep, there are." The audience was silent, and so was my friend. He looked inside the box, and then at me like, "Dude, what the heck?" He finished the magic trick by pouring a bunch of cereal into the bowl he'd set out earlier, and I walked back to the stands, embarrassed. I'm 99% sure no one remembers or cares, but I still think about that moment way too much. Oh no, I thought I was getting through this thread okay, but your mention of talent show brought a terrible memory bubbling back up. I think this was like 4th grade. I was the kid that had very few actual friends and got picked on. My one friend, the one that was nice to you but made fun of you if cool kids were around, encouraged me to sign up for the talent show. I had no skills or talent and hated public speaking or performing of any kind. But dumbass little me decided I would make up my own dance routine and perform my heart out. Then everyone would have to like me. Well, needless to say, I did not perform my heart out. My dance routine started with me in a crouched position, and continued with me in that crouched position, and ended with me in that crouched position, crying. When some adult mercifully turned off the music and ushered me off the stage, I was definitely not any cooler after that. You could have just played it off as some sort of modern dance art piece instead of 4 minutes of fetal crying. Do you even remember them? I remember all of them. I wish I could throw my memories down an old missile silo too. Bucky, right? Thistle sounds kind of stupid, but it was a big one for me. When I was about 11, my parents and I went to go get McDonald's and we got 1 cheeseburger each. When we got home, my mom said, "Son, go heat this burger up for me." I had misunderstood what she said as, "Son, go eat this burger up for me." 3 minutes later she called me back to her room and asked about why the burger was taking so long to heat up. I told her I had eaten it, and she cried. She had worked for hours just to get home and have her son eat her burger when she had not had breakfast or dinner. It was the first time I have ever made her cry. I feel like an a-hole every time I think about it. Oh my god. I know this feeling and it is crushing. When I was 12, my brother and I were so hungry. We hadn't eaten a single thing all day. We were really poor, so this was like a common thing. My mom worked all day as a cashier, came home and gave us like $5 to go to the gas station and buy 3 cans of Chef Boyardee raviolis. We bought it, came home, cooked it up, and just absolutely inhaled it. Then like 10 minutes later, my mom walks in and sees the empty pot and says, "You ate it all?" And the dejected look on her face was the first point I realized she wanted some. 2. She hadn't eaten anything all day, either, but she totally played it off with a smile and "oh good," and then ended up going to bed hungry. And it's been 23 years but that shit still hurts me deep down. So, this is so sad and kind of beautiful at the same time. But it reminds me of this. We were all so poor growing up. My mom raised us mostly, but my dad popped in for a couple years when I was 9-11. One night I spent at his apartment in those 2 years of non-absence. We watched a movie. I think it was Cinderella Man. It was about an old-fashioned boxer who had to fight to support his family. One night, the boxer comes home after the children are in bed, and his wife serves him dinner. One child wakes up to the smell of the food, still hungry from his meager meal. The father, despite being exhausted from fighting, claims he had a dream where he had a huge juicy steak, and he can't possibly eat another bite. He gives the child his meal. I probably remembered all this very wrong. My dad saw this. He made us each a hungry man, and offered me half of his. I said sure. It was already plenty of food for a 10-year-old. Later that night, he made a point of saying I'm still hungry, but I wanted to be sure you had enough. I felt so uncomfortable. He did a lot of performative sacrifices like that. I think about all the dumb lies I'd make up in high school about myself like I'm cringing thinking about them now. When I was in year 4 I was a compulsive liar for some reason. Highlights included having a fake sister who I later killed off with the flu for plot reasons. Her name was TJ. I drew her on a family poster we had to make and everything. Then when we brought said posters home, mum asked me why an erased drawing of TJ was on there, and I told her some annoying girl in my class drew herself on my poster. I also once told people, including teachers, that my family and I were moving to Paris at the end of the year, when in reality we were just moving 2 hours away. At the end of the year there was an assembly for those leaving, and afterwards one of the teachers said have fun in Paris when my family walked past her and mum just gave her a weird look, but you can bet your ass I pretended like that teacher wasn't even there. Our class went to watch a local play once and I said that my dad, who for the record has no musical talent and was a construction site manager at the time, was one of the main cast. I distinctly remember pointing out one of the woman cast members and telling my teacher that was my dad. And my teacher said something along the lines of, I guess she does look a bit like a man. To this day I have never been called out for these lies, mostly thanks to having moved after that year, upon which I became normal again. All the kids I knew that were big liars like that in school kept on being big liars but just got better at it. Most people see through it but just don't call you out on it. I had a friend that used to lie like that. I knew very well he was lying, and he knew very well that I knew that he was lying. And he knew I knew he was lying. He's still lying like that to this day, but I want nothing to do with him. Back in high school, there was this big debate that I was preparing for. I was representing my school out of many other, better qualified debaters because of my lucky track record of having recently won other debates. I was nervous, but I knew from practice that once I went up on stage and started talking, everything would get easier and it would be smooth sailing from there. So I walk up to the mic, clear my throat, and out came, "Welcome, dailies and mental gin. Sam, that ducks. At least you didn't choke as hard as I did during my middle school spelling and geography Bs. I was so nervous and anxious that without thinking much I spelled bridal as bridal, even though the moderator made it clear it was of the wedding type and not what you put on a horse. Naturally, I followed up this screw up by bombing out of the geography B in the first round by quickly and hurriedly saying Canada when the moderator asked me which country has the greater population size. Canada or Mexico? There are more moose in Canada than there are people, and there are more brain cells in Barney from The Simpsons' head than there are in mine. I've shared this story before, but I still cringe when I think about my first solo date back in high school. I had a huge crush on this girl. Thought she was really cool and I loved her art, and I couldn't believe she said yes. We went to the zoo because it was free and we were just broke teenagers and we had a blast. Afterwards we went to grab some food at this place before having to split off to go home. Our trains were heading in the opposite directions and the entrances were across the street from each other. So I walked with her to her side to say goodbye. I closed my eyes and awkwardly leaned in to give her a kiss goodbye, and she went in more for a hug. I ended up headbutting her in the face and her nose started bleeding. I was so embarrassed and didn't know what to say, so I just asked, "Are you okay?" She replied, "I think so." Still not knowing what to do, I just said, "Okay, bye," and then ran across the street to catch my train. It was so painfully awkward and embarrassing. I avoided her for weeks after that. If it helps, I also headbutted my first girlfriend when I first tried to kiss her. It happens. She didn't bleed though. You didn't do it hard enough. I got hammered at a co-worker's wedding and ruined a perfectly good wedding photo by flipping the bird. Use Photoshop and turn it into a thumbs up. All the time, not just when lying in bed. Every time I find myself doing nothing, my mind tends to remind me of all the poor choices, bad decisions, humiliation, and everything I have done, no matter how small and insignificant it was or how long it might have been. As simple as letting a balloon go when I was 5, to the more intense argument with my dad when I was 15, to some random thing like I saw an old lady's handkerchief fell down but didn't stop to help her pick it up last week. To prevent myself from drowning in all the self-hatred, I try to always keep busy. Work, movies, games, any activity to keep my mind from taking a break and reminding me of all these regrets and frustrations I had built from the last 25 years of my existence. Therapy has helped me a lot with stuff like this. If you can take advantage of it, I would recommend it. Do you have a really good memory, or do you maybe have a touch of the perfectionism? Nietzsche said that not being able to forget your past mistakes is one of the worst aspects of human existence and a terrible suffering. I'm inclined to agree. I take a long deep breath and shake my head. Putting your mind into these heart-cringing moments can stress and worry you. Get out of it by reminding yourself it's done. Be in the present now. Seconded. Live in the moment. Make mistakes because everyone makes them. I haven't made a mistake in at least 53 minutes. Is this too little? Should I make one on purpose? Yeah, it sucks. But you have to forgive yourself for when you didn't know any better. I have loads of dumb stuff. One of the worst ones, weekly replays and all that, was when I was talking about the football player Obafemi Martins to some of my mates at the pub. I'd had a few and was getting into my story about how good this volley of his was, and I referred to him as that black dunt who plays for Newcastle, not realizing that one of the guys I was talking to was South African. He took offense to my language, and rightly so. That's not a particularly nice way to refer to anyone. I tried to explain how the word dunt was simply a synonym for fellow amongst my mates. Ask any Kiwi or Aussie and they'll back that claim up. And how my use of black had been purely descriptive. But it all fell flat and I felt like the a-hole of the world. He never really forgave me for that, I think. Sorry DX. Yeah, that's definitely forgivable. In Australia I reckon we refer to each other as dunts more often than mates, so don't blame ya. Yeah, no doubt. I think it taught me that even though we may have normalized that language amongst ourselves, I should still be wary of people who might find it vulgar. I misread this so big edit. One time stoned I fumbled my words ordering coffee and ended telling the counter person no, I don't like anything black. He was a black man. Not sure if it hit him the same way as it hit me BC of the weed, but yeah, that was in 05ish. Awesome LOL. Unintentional racism is the biggest cringe. Ooh, this happened to me earlier this year. Premise. I am a woman. This will add to the awkwardness. So I go to a cafe for breakfast. There are two baristas. One with brown hair and one with red hair. I'm still sleeping and distracted by conversation with my brother, so I don't notice the hair, or even their facial features, or whatever. They are two women in my head. So, the brown hair takes my order while she's doing other orders and moving around. And the last thing I ask is orange juice. She asks red or yellow. Let me think. Then this barista leaves the room to fetch something and I don't notice. I decide for red orange juice, turn in the direction of the other barista, who was a little further, and shout, red, now. This exchange doesn't happen in English. The way I said red, yes, it's also an adjective, but it's also a rude, very common catcall towards red-haired women. She turns to me and throws me a killing, and confused, look. I'm still in need of caffeine. I don't get why she's mad at me for answering her question, and put the largest grin on my face. 2 seconds of awkwardness until I finally realize this is not the person I was talking to. Also, she has red hair. I explain what happened and everything went fine, but oh god, the awkwardness. All the time. It usually doesn't bother me for a long time, but it does bother me. There are times in the past where I've been insensitive and hurt people close to me, and those are the things I torment myself with on occasion. Bro, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.